NJ.com and the Heldridge Hotel. Welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insider Brian Fonseca. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant, our Rutgers basketball preview edition. I've got my Final Four coaster sitting right here. You like that? That's what I put my beverages, the 2021 Final Four, Indianapolis. Why in the world would I have that? I have no idea. But anyway, welcome back to the Rant. Hoops preview. Let's talk some basketball. Kind of all talked out in football. We're going to break down the schedule. We're going to give our thoughts on the players to watch, everything. But first, let's do some news. News you broke. Congratulations last week. Rutgers finally hired a basketball GM, Rob Sullivan. Why don't you give us a sense about what we know about him and what he's going to do?
So Rob Sullivan, a long time connected to St. Joseph's. He was a reserve guard on, the peak of the Phil Martelli era. He was on the bench for the 2003-2004 season where they went 30-2 and just had a magical year. And then he stayed on for a decade after he graduated as a director of basketball operations, essentially the guy that takes care of all the stuff behind the scenes. He left for 3 years to work for an agency. And then he came back in a senior athletic director role that eventually transitioned into him becoming the general manager of the basketball program, which at St. Joe's is essentially their football program because they don't have football. And he was in that role last year before he came to Rutgers. No connections to Steve Pikiell as far as I understand. And it's worth noting that the head coach at St. Joseph's, Billy Lang, left the program to become an assistant at the Knicks like 3 weeks before the season started. So I don't know the details of how involved Rob was in the search before that or anything. I'm just saying moving to Rutgers was an obvious choice for him, if only because he knows who's going to be leading the program this year.
Getting out while the getting's good. Yeah, and that's understand. I'm certain the process had moved along before that happened, you would think. And look, it was, we've talked about a lot on the podcast, certainly a long time coming, many iterations this thing took on. I think for me, and watching it from the outside, the moment, like there are some things that happened that made you think that this was going to be the hire, or this was going to be the type of hire. When you combine it with the women's basketball program, and I don't know if it's going to be a 50-50 breakdown or whatever it's going to be, that kind of steers it one direction. Certainly Cookies Washington was involved in this. He's going to be involved in doing this, and I think that it's just, while I understand Steve Pikiell might have talked to some people in the NBA, I think going back to his comfort level, and I think what he wanted, and based on, Rob Sullivan talked to Jerry Carino, based on what we can gather from that interview, it is handling a lot of the stuff that Steve Pikiell's been trying to hand off. It's not just roster management, but it's NIL and it's that kind of stuff too, right? This is going to be a catch-all job.
Yes, I think that's a great way to put it. He's going to do all the stuff Steve Pikiell doesn't want to do, anything that's not really coaching his basketball team, right? And I think the other thing that kind of said this is going in this direction was the salary range. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how it compares to other GMs across the conference. I'm not saying he's underpaid. I'm just saying it's not exactly like they were opening the purse strings to get an NBA GM or an NBA assistant GM, but anyone who thought that was happening is unrealistic.
Yeah, right? Let's be clear. And then the other programs don't have a dude. They have an office. They have several dudes. Like, this is not like North Carolina doesn't have one guy who does both programs. Like this already you're operating below what the big time programs have.
Correct. And this is not a general manager in the way people think of, like a Brian Cashman or how involved he's going to be in roster construction. He's going to do his best to collect money for the program, which they desperately need, to try and help Steve Pikiell build a roster the way he envisions it, the way he likes to play basketball, have his input. You have the quote here. We'll look into it. I didn't think his answer about analytics was particularly encouraging if you think that this program is going to change in any meaningful way. And again, I give some leeway here that if, when we talk to Rob or we see how he does for the first 3 or 6 months, that things can change. But my sense in reading his initial thoughts on his position, his experience, and the way he views things is that this is going to just kind of be an extension of what the program has been under Pikiell for 10 years and not exactly an evolution that most people had hoped for when the job opened.
Yeah. I was hoping that it would be someone that had some teeth that would be able to steer Steve Peichel away from his worst influences? Because we know he's got plenty of good influences as a basketball coach. He really does. And yeah, you're right. And we highlighted this answer to Jared Carino, how much will analytics play a role in your roster management? And his answer was, we've used a lot of different analytic tools at St. Joe's, but ultimately I'm a big believer in feel. And he goes on to explain what that means. Certainly, I'm sure that's an answer that if he said to Steve Peichel, "I'm with you," it would have been a good way to win the interview. Know the person you're interviewing with before you go in for a job interview. Good advice. But I mean, I'm a big believer in feel too. When if there's 2 minutes left in the game and you're like, I don't know, the star player's not playing well, let's give it to the freshman. I'm totally comfortable with that. I'm not a big believer in feel for roster management. I'm just not. And resource allocation, and that's what concerns me. You're going to need someone who's going to be able to tell Steve Peichel, no, you can't dedicate a quarter of your roster to the 5'10", guard from, Fordham. You're going to have to find a way to, and I don't know. Again, we could give him a fair shake. He's just got here. He's got to sort through this himself. But that answer did trip me as well.
I think we have to be fair also in that, to your point, unless something changes that we don't know about, there's not this big front office staff that they're building that will help him out. And he's doing all of this for both the men's and women's program.
Yeah.
And he doesn't exactly have a massive NIL budget to work with unless he can work some magic and build it up, right? So he's really pushing a rock up a mountain. And to expect him to come in here, revolutionize things is probably unfair, but that's the way things shook out. That also makes the margin for error so much thinner when you are trying to build a roster out of transfers, right? Like we saw that kind of last year, which is why I think Steve Peichel and him have to build on retention and trying to keep as many good players in the program around as possible, so that the transfers are supplemental and you're not relying on having hits in all these transfer portal attempts. So again, we'll see how the offseason works out. The thing though is, I think the lack of a front office staff hurts because transfer portal does not start the day the transfer portal opens. The transfer portal starts 3 months before that, 4 months before that. When A, you get a feel of what you have on your roster. B, you have a feel of, all right, how many of these guys can realistically retain? C, what positions are we going to have to target significantly in the portal? D, what are the options going to be out there? Because kids aren't deciding the day before the portal opens, I'm going in the portal. You have to have these connections within the basketball community to understand where things are going, who's going in there, what players in that group can you realistically target, which is where the analytics come in. This is how much money we have. This is the level of player we can get. And then when you have the list of players that you can realistically target, which of those players are a Steve Peichel player, that's where I think feel could kind of play a big part.
Yeah.
I guess my point is that Rob Sullivan has a lot on his plate.
He does.
A lot.
He does. Yeah. I think it's a good way of looking at this, though. It is a positive. There are a couple of positive developments here. At least you've got someone now who is charting that course, and you also have someone in Kelly Zinn who, if all goes well, she's going to raise him some money to work with above and beyond the player share, right? So I think you can say the basketball program's probably getting about $3.5 million from whatever the money from the university, from the revenue share. I think if you can get it, if you can double that, if you can get it, you can add that pool another 3 million that Steve Peichel can work with, and then you have someone like this who can say, okay, if you're going to overpay here for this really good small forward, we need to save money here on your backup center, like someone who's going to help make these decisions. So there's a rhyme or reason for it, like someone who's going to help chart this path. So it's not just simply like, well, we put all of our money into Dylan and Ace. Let's go get the kid from San Diego State. It's just stuff like, what I'm saying? At least there is you're figuring it out beyond the head coach getting in the car and trying to, raise money selling one bottle of bad bourbon at a time. You've got some strategy. I don't know. It is a step in the right direction, whether or not, it's, hey, look, it's late in the game. We've got to see. I guess we have to see what's going to happen with it.
I guess the determining factor here will be, yes, Steve Peichel will get help finally in doing these things that he did not want to do and that were a big burden on him over the past 2 years. I think we could be fair in saying that. My question is he going to be able to be a dissenting voice? Is he going to have the cachet to tell Steve Pikiell no, to tell Steve Pikiell you're doing this wrong, to tell Steve Pikiell emphatically we have to change this, this, and this, to tell Steve Pikiell this is a big reason why this program is not doing well? Or, Steve Pikiell has surrounded himself with a lot of guys who have been with him for a long time, guys that he is comfortable around, and I'm just not sure how much pushback he's getting. Even before Kelly Zinn got here, he had an AD who hired him, who essentially gave him carte blanche, right? So is Rob Sullivan going to be the guy? Yes. Is he going to be the guy that's going to be able to be in a room and say, no, we can't do this. We have to do it this way. We have to think about changing our thinking. To me, the ultimate deciding factor is, will Rob Sullivan have any cachet, or will he just be another one of the guys in the group that for a majority of the time are going to be yes men? That's the determining factor to me.
We'll find out. That's something we'll learn this time next year, I think, or in the months that follow. Certainly we won't know anything about it this season. It's too late for this season. We have a roster for this season. All right, let's break this thing down and big picture feel for it, right? Like, if at this point last year, I was excited, like legitimately excited to watch Rutgers play basketball. That's the best way I could describe it. I was jazzed. I was like circling games on the calendar. It's a different feel this time. Obviously, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey in the NBA, Lathan Somerville, gone. Like people in the program that you had high hopes for. It's a completely different roster. Now, I think the word I'm going to use is curious. Right? Like I am just curious to see what this team looks like as it gets back to quote unquote Steve Pikiell's roots. I don't know what to expect from. You got 11 guys on the roster. Like if you had to tell me to break down the minutes, I couldn't do it. You have to tell me to break down the scoring breakdown. It is just a complete mystery to me. And in some ways, that's interesting.
And I think it's like that by design. Steve Pikiell has not been shy about saying they've been doing their work in the dark this offseason, right. A very stark contrast to last year where there were 1,000 cameras and agents and NBA personnel and reporters all over every practice, watching every move. Now they're back to what they were, 8 years ago, where they're working in silence, partly because there's not really anywhere near as much interest as last year, and partly by design, because I think this is where Steve Pikiell is more comfortable, right? So if you're looking for reasons to be optimistic, you tasked me with trying to get you feeling good about the season.
Oh, yeah.
I'll start with all the positives, right? Rutgers is returning to those roots. Steve Pikiell's talked a lot about rebounding this offseason, how they've been really bad the last 2 years, and that's been a deciding factor on why they haven't reached their goals. I don't think it's as big a deal as he's making it out to be, but I do agree that they've been really bad in that area, and if they make progress there, I don't know if they'll be better. I certainly think they'll have more desire to rebound. And the same goes for defensively. I don't know if this is going to be another vintage Steve Pikiell defense. And I have reasons for being doubtful of that we'll get into later in the less positive segment of this podcast. But I feel pretty confident, at least in the way that Steve has talked about in the one practice we saw, and just kind of the vibe I'm getting, is that the desire will be there. Mm-hmm. There will be, if Rutgers is exerting more energy on one side of the ball than the other, it's going to be back to doing that on the defensive side, not on the offensive side last year. So this will look like a vintage Steve Pikiell team, I think.
Right. Yeah. A lot of guys who have something to prove. A lot of guys who, and I was only around the team once on media day, and I just got the sense that none of these guys really, like they're aware of what happened last year, but other than JaMychal Davis, like really not a lot of experience on the team. They weren't here for it. They don't really care. It was disappointing the year before. Like a couple of guys were in Europe, didn't watch any of it, like it's just sort of funny. It's just like, well, I don't know. And they, I don't think they're not going to judge themselves on that at all. Of course the fans will. I think a lot of people, it's going to be hard. Nothing's going to make people forget about last year, but I think this season, if it goes well, can make people at least move on from it. And I guess that to me is like, that to me is a different thing. Forget it. No, you're not going to forget it. But like, if you see things, all right, this program's getting back to Steve Pikiell, what he came here for, if he reminds you that he really was a good basketball coach for this program for a good chunk of time. Like if he can get to the point where you're seeing the fundamentals, you're seeing the team play hard, you're seeing good defense, you're scraping and clawing against better opponents night after night. If the rack becomes a place where it's loud and it's hard to win at again, if these things happen, then I think people will move on from last season.
I don't think they will move on. I don't. That is a scar that will be there for.
Well,
Unless
forgetting and
Rutgers,
move on are two different things. I mean, just kind of accept it. It's gone. It's in the rearview mirror. That's what I mean by move on. You think it's you're just never gonna.
I think
Never
it'll
gonna.
linger there forever until they ever make a Final Four again. I just think it's one of those deep scars. And as much as people would want to forget, and again, as we talked about on the last podcast, Dylan Harper is going to be playing 15 years in the NBA. So even
Yeah,
if you
that's a
want to
problem.
forget, if you
Yeah.
watch SportsCenter, whenever if that's still around, you're going to be reminded of what could have been.
At least his
But
games are at 10 p.m. You know, you can go to bed. You don't have to see it. Just don't look at the highlights in the morning.
that's true. Well, I mean,
I'm
people
trying
check
here,
Twitter,
folks.
right? So it's going to
Trying.
pop up.
Right.
Anyway. Here's how I would frame that, right? I think that last year was such a buildup and then such a disappointment that it drained out anyone's excitement and buzz around the program. I hope I'm not projecting here, but it just feels like this is a season with the least amount of buzz pre-season in a long time, as far as I can remember, right? And I think that if they do show all those signs of life, as you said, there will be back to restoring some excitement around the program. Not a lot, not as much as there were at the peak of the Pikel era, but I think that people will have less doom and gloom and still have some semblance of hope that things could kind of get turned around and Rutgers isn't headed to, perennial bottom feeder status, right? So that's how I would frame it. I don't think it's realistic to think this team is going to suddenly bounce back and play at a level, at their best under Pikel, but I think if they show competence, partly because of how low the expectations are for this year, that people will feel better. I don't know if optimistic is the word, but they'll feel better about where the program is at.
All right. Give me your starting five.
Okay. So you're asking me who I think the starting five will be or who I think the best five are?
Both, either. I don't. Yeah, give me who the starting five is going to be first, because I'm not sure I know that.
Okay. So for the season opener against Ryder on Wednesday, my prediction for the starting five will be JaMychal Davis at point guard.
Okay, one.
And I'm going to bounce around a little bit here, but I got Emmanuel Obole at center.
Okay, I think that's a lock as well.
Dylan Grant at the 4.
Okay.
Darren Buchanan at the 3.
Okay.
And Haroon Zerno at the 2. That is my guess for the opening day starting five.
Okay. Now, what is that? Is that different from who you think your best starting five is, or your best five?
Right. So obviously there's the contingent of you can't always put your best five on the floor to start because you want some guys coming off the bench,
right,
for ammo, et cetera, right? I think at some point in the season, Lino Mark will emerge. I don't know if he'll become the starting point guard, but he will take minutes off of JaMychal Davis. Maybe you play JaMychal Davis as the 2, but I would say Lino Mark as the guard. Haroon Zerno, I think he's going to live up to some expectations and he'll be the starting 2 guard. I think Buchanan and Grant are too similar of a player that if you play them both together, you're really going to be clogging things up inside. So I would say putting at the 3, you put in Dennis Badalu, who I think is going to be the more cerebral guy on this team. And if there is an X factor as far as interesting style of play and offensive, change of pace, I think he can add something there. And then the 4, I think you probably still start Dylan Grant. Maybe it's matchup dependent. If you're facing more of a bulkier center, you throw in a Darren Buchanan to add some muscle down low. But I guess Dylan Grant would be the 4. And then at the 5, I think you're in real big trouble if Byfall doesn't become the starter at some point soon, right? I think Obole will start out of respect. He's been in the program for 3 years. I think Pikel has clearly shown deference to guys who have been around as far as the starters. But I think in an ideal world, Byfall will eventually emerge as your guy at center. Because you can't win games if Emmanuel Obole is playing 20 minutes a game. You can't. I'm sorry to say that, but you can't.
It's funny because you're starting 5, and this is like backup quarterback syndrome. Like you're starting 5. We know a lot of what to expect there. Like I know what JaMychal Davis is as a point guard. I don't think he's a Big Ten point guard. I know what Obole is as a center. I don't think he's a Big Ten center. Like he's a 10-minute off the bench guy. He's a body. He certainly can play at this level. We've seen Buchanan. He's an A10 player. Like I think he's got a role. Again, he can have a role on a team like this. And we know what Grant is. Like Grant was a good complementary player last season with a higher upside, which is why I think if that's the starting 5, if that becomes your best 5, it is hard to see this team exceeding expectations. Where I'm interested in this is because when you inject like a Lino Mark, very highly recruited, interesting player, like someone we're not familiar with, a freshman. I get it. You don't want to rely on a freshman in big roles again, that backfired, but high upside, more of a true point guard. I think that's interesting to me. And Badalu is the name you see a lot. You hear a lot from people within the program. Like, is he the answer there as someone who can hit a 3-pointer? Like like if you had a player like him last year, someone who's just a 40% 3-pointer shooter. If that's the case, I can totally see what you're saying, but you just don't know if it's true. Right. And he just don't know. Like, can he play in this level? Can he be that guy? I have no idea.
40% is way too high. Way too high. I think that
37.
he could be a 36, 37 guy at best. And he's probably the only guy on this roster.
Zerno's not going to be, Zerno's not capable of that.
Zerno had a really good year 2 years ago, and then he had a bad year last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a wash. I think if he's a 34%, 35% guy, you're happy. Other than that, they not only have no above average 3-point shooters, they have no average 3-point shooters. They have their 3-point shooting is bad with a capital B, right? So that's one major concern I have for this team. Badalu, I think his biggest contribution will be just the way he sees the game and the way he can move the ball. I think if he's able to utilize his vision and kind of just the different way he plays coming from Europe, that can be kind of an X factor, because Rutgers is not going to beat a team straight up talent-wise basketball. They don't have a Dylan Harper who can drive to the lane. They don't have a Cam Spencer who can hit threes. They don't have anyone that excels straight up. I think that any offensive success will have to be, one, offensive rebounding, just crashing the glass and getting second chances, and two, creativity from Badalu, and maybe he just is in the 99th percentile of my, outlook of what he could be, that he just creates things out of his butt, essentially. And the thing with him also, he has to make up what projects to be some rough defense. I mean, I don't see him playing great defense. He does not look athletic. I think he'll be a little step slow in the Big Ten. So to make up for a lot of the points he's going to give up defensively, he's going to have to excel offensively.
And we saw what happened when you had guys like that last year, when you had like a Martini on the wing, when you had, guys who just,
PJ Hayes.
PJ Hayes. Yeah, that's a problem. And then that takes away from the team defense. What I will say, and this is the box of chocolates thing with this team. Like, if you talk to people around the program, two names we haven't mentioned yet that they're really excited about: Chris Newilly and Caden Powers. And for reasons, I think, Newilly, again, like an athlete, just you look at him, you're like, oh, wow. And if he could shoot, he'd be playing someplace else. But if he could shoot, he's like, okay, all right, it's a little rough. But you know what I'm saying? Like, he's like really, like, you can tell he can do a lot of things. He's that guy, like, he's going to be a great defensive player. He's going to rebound. He's going to be active. He's going to get in people's faces. He's like, you watch him play and they're really high on him. Powers is the same thing. And, Steve Peichel was at a moment after media day just talking up, he's the most recruited player out of the state of Washington. Like, wow, who's the other guy? Like, he was really excited about him. And sometimes with Peichel, again, he could have been the manager he's talking about. I understand that completely, but it just stuck with me that a couple of people mentioned him. So there's just a lot of depth, a lot of X factors on the benches. Like, I don't know do you think either one of those guys is going to become the answer to some of these questions?
I wouldn't say there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of bodies. There are 15 guys on the roster, right? Depth would imply that there's quality depth. I would not go there. I think Caden Powers could be a guy down the line. I think he has potential. I don't think he's going to have much of a role this year, but I think that if you hang on to him, he's the kind of guy that by year 3 can have some offensive firepower and can be a contributor. Yeah. Newilly is a great shout. I got to be honest, completely forgot him when I was doing my starting 5. I don't think he'll start necessarily. I think he'll have a big role. Steve has been very complimentary of his defense, called him Caleb McConnell-esque, which is a huge compliment. And I think that could eventually earn him a spot in the starting lineup. I think he's very like Buchanan mold in the sense of like energetic defense first kind of guys. So I think he has a chance that if there's a guy on this roster that you want to hold on to 2-3 years, Newilly is the guy that will be a beloved Rutgers player. Like, if you want to imagine a vintage prototypical Rutgers player of the Steve Peichel era, Chris Newilly is as close as you possibly can get to that. So that's a great point, and I think that he will have a pretty big part of the rotation, whether he starts or not. But I think that even early on, Again, I don't think he's going to start in the first game because he's a freshman, and Steve Pikiell just doesn't do that outside of when he has no choice and he has to start Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey because they're that freaking good. But I think he'll have a role, and I think people will like him.
One name we haven't mentioned, Tariq Francis. Where do you see him fitting in? Again, a guy who scored a lot of points in New Jersey, guard. They need scoring. They need someone who's he can take it to the basket. What do you think? He's
a wild card in that he had to carry the load essentially for an awful NJIT team, at least offensively, right? So I think that maybe, say what you will about this roster, they're more talented than NJIT, and his role should be smaller. So maybe with the smaller role, he can be more efficient. Again, that's no guarantee. We've seen that not be the true in the past. Right. The thing with him that I think is a team-wide issue that they have no control over themselves personally. He's really small. And this backcourt is really small. Yeah. And that is one of the major concerns I have, one for rebounding and two for defending, because the Big Ten is big, obviously. Yes. And I just think that Steve Pikiell's teams have thrived in the past in having big guards, right? Guys whose size can overcome any deficiencies. And when you're
Paul
that
Mulcahy,
small, you got to be really
Ron Harper,
Connell, Gio Baker was 6'4". These guys are not very tall. JaMychal Davis is short. Tariq Francis is short.
Yeah.
Mark is 6'1", I think. So that to me is a very big issue that I think they're gonna have to work a lot to overcome this year. And that's one of the reasons I do have concerns about the return to the defense and rebounding, is that some of that stuff, you got to have the physical attributes to do it. And I don't know if they do have that in the backcourt.
Right. Zerno is 6'5". He's taller. He's a taller kid at least, right? Right. He looked at 6'7", but I think they're 6'7". I think they're adding some inches there to some of these guys, which is fine. All right. Do you want to play the little Mike and the Mad Dog here now?
Let's do it. Which one am I?
Am I Mike or am I the Mad? I think you're more of a Mad Dog. I'm older and grumpier. If you don't know what we were talking about, of course, we're going to play the schedule game. We have not talked. We started to do it, and then Brian's like, no, let's do it on the podcast, because it's always good to just do what they used to do. Or we have the schedule in front of us. We're going to pick the record, see what we can come up with. Do you want to be who's more optimistic here? Was it Dog or was it Francesa who was? I guess it depended. They both could be pretty dour. And my game. I think they're gonna go in there and win.
The only thing I have with Dog is that I have the vocal range. Like I'll get pretty high pitched and I'll mumble my words and speak pretty fast. So that's why I'm Dog-esque. I can't speak to his optimism. I will try to be realistic.
I'll do the I used to get that from Mike. He would just like, I could see that's a win. That's a win. All right, this will be fun. I think. I don't know what else we're gonna do. All right, I broke these down into segments. So we're gonna start with the I'm gonna call it the non-conference cupcake segments here. They start out in 5 games, all at the rack. Rider, Maine, Lehigh, American, Central Connecticut. Is there any way? I don't want to go one by one. Well, I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you which one is the big. Lehigh seems like it would be the biggest threat. Most difficult game of those 5. Is there any way they're not sitting here at 5-0?
So more good radio. Let me read out the KenPom ratings preseason for all these teams.
People love when you read KenPom on the podcast. Good. It's exciting. Don't drive off the road, folks. Brian's got KenPom open. Woohoo! Yes.
The only person who'll be driving off the road if he's listening to this is Steve Pikiell, for the fury that people still care about KenPom. So, Rider 302, Maine 284, Lehigh 306,
Whoa.
American 312, and Central Connecticut State 315.
Holy cow. They are some bad basketball teams there. Wow.
These are tomato cans, which Ryan Pusari, the former Rutgers administrator, now the AD at Tufts, would always bust my balls because I called them tomato cans. He thought it was so funny that I would use that term. So if you listen to this podcast, every time I say tomato cans, now I think of Ryan Pusari. But no, I think if you lose any of these games, let alone get in danger of losing any of these games, it's going to be a bad omen for the season. I think you have to be 5-0, and if you want to have some buzz going into the meat of your non-conference schedule, you got to win these games by a lot. Yeah, I'm talking 15, 20, 25. Get like the walk-ons in the game with 4 minutes left.
No, I'm not going there. There's no chance they're going to win all of them by 15. No, there's going to be one of these games and people in the rack could be like, holy shit, this is bad. I'm going to say it's Lehigh just because it's just like a team that's happened. That's you could see them coming in here. I know nothing about Lehigh. You could just see that game being 47-47 with 2 minutes to go. But I'm going to go 5-0. I think they'll win all 5.
We agree there.
Okay. I'm going to write this down now. They were both at 5-0. Okay. Next segment, I'm calling it creatively calling it November. No, I'm sorry, not November. Post Thanksgiving, Vegas and the start of Big Ten and Seton Hall. So it's a hodgepodge. I've got 3 games in Vegas, 2 games in the Big Ten, and then the last 3 non-conference games here. Let's start with Vegas. Start with number 18 Tennessee, then Notre Dame, then the TBD. What do you think? They're gonna get out of Vegas with a win?
If you leave Vegas with a win, it is a resounding success. I mean, it'd be like leaving Vegas with only losing $500. A resounding success.
So you would know nothing about that. In other words, I think
I've gone 0-3 in Las Vegas many times. Not many times.
You're going back to. I want to hear your strategy for gambling out there now. Let's look. Where's Notre Dame picked?
My strategy is not to gamble. To be clear, Notre Dame is 77 on KenPom, and for reference, Rutgers is 85.
Okay, so that's a toss-up. They went 15-18 last year. They're not good, but they lost their player in the front. They lost their one good player in the first against Rutgers. So,
correct. Look, they're not going to beat Tennessee, and I think between Notre Dame and whatever team they play the third game, which probably isn't going to be one of the better teams, you have to hope they win one of those games. If you go 0-3, it's not the end of the world, but I think it kind of confirms what we think about this team, which is it's not going to be very good, right? If you win one of them, you feel kind of confident going into what is a gauntlet to start Big Ten play at home after that trip to Vegas.
Okay.
So I guess to answer the question, I will go 1-2. I will give them the optimistic outtake and say they win one game.
Okay, 1-2. I guess I don't know. But I just don't. I just don't know. Wish I knew who the TBD was. I guess I'll go 1-2 too. I don't think they're going to. I mean, Notre Dame can shoot. I guess we'll see how the defense is. All right, I'll go 1-2 as well. Reluctantly, because they went 1-2 out there last year. It's going to be a tough field. But yeah, if they don't go 1-2 there, it's going to be hard to fill this thing out. All right, then I mean, Steve Pikel's right about the Big Ten schedule makers. Number 1, Purdue, December 2nd at the rack. Hey, at least Rutgers has beaten Purdue at number 1 before. Then number 7, Michigan in Michigan, December 6th. I guess you're going 0-2 there.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of whether Rutgers loses those games. It's whether Rutgers can avoid being embarrassed. That's okay. I mean, those two teams are elite.
Right. Is Purdue a national champion this year, you think? Gun to your head?
I predicted them to win the national championship for the past 4 years. Eventually.
I think Michigan's got a better chance than Purdue. All right. So yeah, 2 losses there at Seton Hall. Now, again, throw out the records when the Rutgers Seton Hall rivalry. I'm gonna hype that up. Again, another group of people where Jermichael Davis is the only person who knows anything about Seton Hall. It's gonna be hilarious. This is at Seton Hall, kind of a pivotal game. You gotta win it, but we know how the rivalry goes. What do you think?
So the transitive property doesn't work here, right? You can't really take what happened last year and apply it to this year. That being said, a team with Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey needed a buzzer-beating 3 to beat the worst Seton Hall team of the 21st century. Rutgers has gotten worse this offseason. So from last season, Seton Hall has gotten better. I don't know how much better, but they've clearly gotten better. So I think I would have to be an idiot to pick Rutgers to win that game, which is why I have Seton Hall winning. And Rutgers they'll go their 13th or 12th year. Jerry Carino had this nugget in his story. They haven't won 3 straight games against Seton Hall since 2012, 2013, when they were playing twice a year. I think that continues, and they lose at Seton Hall.
Whew, man. For conversation's sake, I will veer in the other direction just so we don't have the same exact picks. You make a compelling argument, and I think they're really well coached, but I mean, they were bad last year. He's got to replace a lot of pieces. Where's Seton Hall and KenPom? $1 million?
And now you're asking. You were complaining about it before. Now you're asking. They're 93. So 93. They are 8 spots below Rutgers.
8 spots. So about the same thing. All right, I'm going to give Rutgers the W there, an important W. But do so reluctantly. Okay, Pennsylvania and Delaware State. And yeah, is Penn good? Who's going to win the Ivy League this year? Yale.
I'm not quite following the Ivy League as closely as some of our listeners, so I'll leave it to the experts. What I will say is, Penn is the sexy upset pick because Fran McCaffrey is there, and Fran McCaffrey dominated Rutgers when he was at Iowa. I think Penn will be exciting. I think Rutgers will avoid an upset against the Tomato Can this year, and I think they beat Penn in a narrow win, and I think they destroy Delaware State because Delaware State is bad.
All right, so you got them at 8-5. I'll give them the 2 wins there and get them at. This is about as optimistic as a human being can be. Get them through at 9-4. So, all right, there we are. Now we go to the. I mean, January is brutal. It's not just the teams they play. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 games in January. You start with Ohio State, Oregon, at Illinois, Northwestern, at Wisconsin, at Iowa, Indiana, number 22, Michigan State, at Southern Cal. Holy cow. 3 road trips. Midwest twice, cross country once. This is the Big Ten, man. That is quite a January. All right, let's go through it one by one. Ohio State.
It's at home.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so before we go 1-on-1, I will say 9 games. If you win 3, that's probably the ceiling. I think winning 3 of those games. 2 is probably more realistic. 1 is pretty bad, and 0 obviously is, forget about the rest of the season. So I guess as a whole, I'll predict them to win 2 games, and I think Ohio State is one of them.
Okay. They never beat Ohio State, so I'm going to pick them to beat Ohio State now. Like you just said the same thing about Seton Hall. Now I got to pick them to beat Ohio State. When's the last time beat Ohio State?
They beat a ranked Ohio State at home. So in such an exciting game that Ace Bailey committed to Rutgers in the locker room afterward.
Oh, that's right. It was a home game. Okay. Yeah, I forgot about that one. I'm just thinking about all the trips out there. I guess that's what I'm thinking about. The trips to Columbus have not gone well. All right. So you're going to pick a win against Ohio State. I am picking a loss against Ohio State. Sorry. Oregon.
Too much individual offensive talent. Oregon wins.
Oregon wins. Okay. I'm also going to pick an Oregon win at number 17, Illinois. No, that's a hard L for me.
Rutgers has never won there. Not going to happen this year.
Okay. Northwestern. Here we go. W for me.
Second win for me as well.
Got to be a W. Okay. At number 24, Wisconsin. L.
Agreed.
I was down. I mean, what's the status with their program? Where are they in Ken Palm?
I will pull up the Ken Palm, but I'm high on Iowa personally. So Iowa's 46 on Ken Palm.
Really? Wow.
I'm very high on Iowa. They got Ben McCollum, who was an excellent coach at Drake.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
he might be the only coach in America that plays slower than Steve Pikiell's ideal. They play like 50 minutes a game or whatever absurd number. They have maybe the best point guard in the Big Ten. They have a lot of guys that played for Ben McCollum for a long time. The only window I could see this being a win for Rutgers is because they play so few possessions that every possession is magnified, right? So when it's a game like that, when there are so few opportunities to score and have the ball, those are the kind of games where upsets happen more often. And that's why, Drake was able to beat so many teams last year. But I still think that Iowa's going to be so much more talented, and they'll be able to beat Rutgers pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't. Again, crazy things happen in the Big Ten. Midweek trip to Iowa after trip to Wisconsin. I just don't. Yeah, I have a hard time seeing that one. So another L for me. Oh boy, I'm getting grim here. All right. Then Indiana at home. Hey, they beat the Hoosiers all the time. Hoosiers aren't ranked. What's going on with the Hoosiers?
I think the national perception of the Hoosiers has been destroyed by Mike Woodson and them sucking for a very long time. I'm an Indiana apologist. I am always in the belief that why can't I think of the coach's name right now? Who's the legendary
Woodson?
Indiana coach?
Oh, Bob Knight?
I'm of the belief that the aura of Bobby Knight will eventually return.
Right.
And I've thought about this every year. I was dumb enough to think that Mike Woodson would be able to win big with Indiana. I do think that, and now I can't think of the current Indiana coach's name. Jesus Christ. I do think that under this current coach, he's proven to win in other places. I think they finally have an adult that knows what it's like to coach a big time program. They have a lot of talent in the transfer portal. And I mean, that's not different than previous years, but they have a coach that will be able to maximize it. And I think that as much as Haroon Zerno is going to want to beat Indiana because he was committed to there and then essentially told to go find another place to play, he'll want to beat them. I just think Indiana is too talented and too well coached, and they'll win that game, pretty handily.
You could have given me, I was going to make fun of you, but you could have given me $1 billion and a billion guesses, and I wasn't coming up with Darian DeVries. The Drake head coach is now the Indiana basketball coach. Yeah. So
he was at West Virginia last year, to be fair, but yes, he went from Drake to, that's two Drake coaches. First it was DeVry, and then it was Ben McCollum.
All right. I'm just because I'm going to say they're going to pull off an upset against Indiana there, giving them a W.
Okay.
All right. Because Michigan State, is that game in the Garden?
No games are at the Garden this year. That'll be at the
That's
Rec.
a shame. All right. That's an L.
I think this is going to be a brutal time where Izzo just runs Rutgers off the floor, goes to the press conference after and says, Steve Pikiell's a great coach, a great man. He'll turn this around. He'll give you the kiss of death. I really, that would not be a great sign.
And then at Southern Cal again. Oh, at least they got Southern. They're out there for 2 games, but at Southern Cal ends January. I don't know anything about Southern Cal, but I'm going to give them an L.
I know I said they were only going to win 2 games. I'm changing my tune. They'll win that game. I think that they're going to beat Southern Cal. It's the first game of the road trip. I think Southern Cal is very up and down. I think that's the kind of game Musselman might lose. There's no home court advantage in that place. So they'll put all their energy from the West Coast trip into that game and win. And then to start the next month, February, I hope you don't mind me taking over a little hosting for here. The next game to complete the road trip is at number 12 UCLA, the Miles Johnson Bowl.
Oh,
I think Rutgers gets beat pretty badly in that one.
We are both at 11-11 heading into this. And yeah, so at UCLA, that's an L for me as well. No question. That's just a tough place to play. You've got a fun trip. Can you make that trip? If you put in for the
I don't think I can justify any basketball travel at that point in the year.
Come on, just book it. I'll talk to the boss. That'd be a fun trip. All right. Then they come home against Nebraska and Maryland and a mini home stretch. With a week in between. So you got this finally things spread out a little bit. You got 4 days off before playing Nebraska, a full 8 days before playing Maryland. What do you think?
So I have to pick them to win some games because they can't go 4-16 in the Big Ten, right? They're going to win some games that they probably shouldn't or that they're not favored in. So I think, you know what? I say they sweep those 2 games. How about that? They beat Nebraska and Maryland.
Wow. Okay. There you go. Why? Just because they got time? Is Maryland? I mean, Maryland obviously regrouping after Kevin Willard left them in the middle of an NCAA tournament run.
Why?
Where's Maryland and Ken Palm? He's a
tell
good
you.
coach. Buzz taking over. He's a good coach.
Buzz is a good coach, and he typically starts strong. 34.
34.
Here's why. I can't be completely doom and gloom. I got to give myself some reason to not expect myself to be the Grim Reaper walking around the rack in February, right? So, I mean, again, they're going to win a game they shouldn't. Maybe Maryland's the game they shouldn't win.
Okay, so 2 wins there. I'm going to give them the win over. We haven't talked about them. Where's Nebraska and Ken Palm? They're going to be in the 40s, right?
51.
Okay. So I'm going to give them a win over Nebraska. I can't see them winning both. I'm going to give them the L to Maryland. All right. Then they're at Penn State and at Minnesota, which is just a kind of a cruel quirk in the schedule where you think, all right, eases up here. We get a winnable game, and they're both on the road. Does it matter? The road versus home?
They've been pretty good at Penn State in the past.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to win that game.
Okay. I'm going to give them a win there too.
Penn State
At
and Rutgers
Minnesota. I mean,
University.
it's been a tough place to play, but is Minnesota gonna be better this year?
I like their coach. I think he's had success in the past, and he's a
Mhm.
Minnesota guy.
Yep.
I'll pick Minnesota.
Pick Minnesota. I'm gonna give him the L. It's just like another road game, another road toss-up game against an even opponent. You're not gonna win. You're not gonna win all of those. And back home against Washington, this is where I'm gonna give them a win. They're gonna steal that one against the Huskies.
The Lathan Somerville Bill.
Yep.
Jesus Christ. Lathan Somerville Bowl.
Little motivation there.
And it seems like Lathan's not going to have a big role there. Seems like he's going to have a smaller role there than he did at Rutgers, or even would have at Rutgers this year. Which, green grass isn't always greener, but I think that the minutes he does get, he will be fired up, which might actually be in Rutgers' favor.
Yeah.
But I just think Washington is more talented, and they'll win that game.
Okay, let's give him an L. And March, the last three or four, we'll do four. Because with the Big Ten tournament, they will qualify. Everyone's getting in. At Maryland, at Michigan State, and home versus Penn State before the Big Ten tournament. What do you think?
What's my record?
All right, you were 11-11, and then you went 3-3. So you're a robust 14-14. Do
you have my Big Ten record off? How many wins do I have right so far?
You keep track of this yourself. What am I? You're 0-2. Okay, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Big Ten wins so far.
I have 6.
Yeah, 2, 3.
I have Ohio State, Northwestern,
4, 5.
USC, Nebraska, Maryland, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I picked them to win at Penn State, right?
You did.
Okay. So I say those 3 games, they lose all 3. I was going to pick them to win one of the Penn State games. I guess since I picked them to win on the road, I'll pick them to lose at home.
All right. I will. I'm going to give them both gave them both Penn State games. Oof. Is Penn State that bad? Probably. All right.
Penn State and Rutgers were universally seen as the 2 worst teams in the Big Ten, 17th and 18th, depending on who you asked. So yes, they're that bad.
Okay. I'm gonna give. I'm giving them 3 losses to finish out. I'm not gonna give them both Penn State wins. I gave them the one on the road. So yeah, I'm doing the same thing. They're gonna lose the last 3, and then the Big Ten tournament. Gonna have them steal one there. Can you have them steal one there?
I agree with you.
Maybe
I agree with
you. You think they're gonna steal one?
Yeah, because I think they're gonna play a team. I mean, Rutgers is gonna have nothing to play for. They'll play but Rutgers is gonna have nothing to play for with no expectations going into the season.
Right.
I think they'll maybe match with a team that also has nothing to play for, but they did have expectations. So they'll be in Indy or Chicago or Minnesota or wherever it is, kind of just playing out the string, and Rutgers will have some motivation. So yeah, I think they'll win the first one and then get boat race in the second one.
Okay. So you get win and loss. I'm just gonna say they're gonna lose because they're not gonna. Yeah. So I'm the negative one here. Who would have guessed? I came in saying, Brian, don't be too try to show a little reason for hope, and I had them going. Oh boy, 13-19. Is that right? Is that the math right? No, 13-18.
No, 13-19 because you counted the Big Ten game.
Yeah,
the Big Ten.
And you have them, Mr. Optimist. 1, 2. I get 11, 2, 3, 4. So you've got them going 15 and 20.
No,
15 and 18, right?
It would have to be 15,
2, 3, 4,
and
7. Yeah,
15 and 18. Yeah, that's correct. 15 and 18 because they'd be 14 and 17 regular season.
Mm-hmm.
They would have won the Big Ten and lose one. So yeah, 15 and 18. I got them.
Whew. What do you think?
I think we landed. The games
the
are.
range?
We're not gonna pick the right results, but I think ultimately we're in the right ballpark of what expectations are for this team, and barring a surprise, that's probably where they're going to land.
Yeah, I think the problem is when you go through it like this, it is just hard to. It's just hard to pick out wins without saying, "Oh, they're going to get one eventually." That's kind of where you're at, and I guess even if this team exceeds what I think what it's capable of, you're still going to look at this and go, I mean, like even a high level, and I guess that's what it is. Like the ceiling on this team is low, right? Like a year ago, we had the high ceiling, high floor, like low floor. Now we've got a low floor, low ceiling. That's the problem. Yeah.
Just not enough talent, no changes in the coaching staff, and brutal Big Ten schedule, right? So the only reason
let me ask you, if we were sitting here, like, and Steve Peichel listens to this, I'll show you, and he comes up with just a shock year. Like, what you think would be the most optimistic you could go? We're going to say that Zerno turns out to be, a European star, Battlelou's knocking down all the threes. They find something in the freshman. The defense is everything expected. They out rebound teams by 5. What is your ceiling? What is, like, if you're at the end of this, knowing what you know about this team, where you can say, come on this podcast and go, you know what? Given the expectations, that was a good season.
You're asking me what is realistically they can hit, or you're asking me what would be the barometer for them, or the threshold for them to say, all right, this was a good season. They exceeded expectations.
For you to say it, knowing what you know about this team now, you just picked 15, 18. What would have to happen at the end of this for you to go, yeah, okay, it's a building block. It's better than I expected.
Results wise, at least 8 Big Ten wins, maybe 9. I think winning 10 games would be a home run if you go 500 in the Big Ten, because that was what the best teams at Rutgers did. So I think 8 wins, I think, would be the threshold where it's like, okay, this is better than I thought. Obviously, you sweep all of your tomato cans, you win 1 game in Vegas, and you beat Seton Hall. Not all of those things, but some combination of those things I think would meet results wise. And then on the court, I want them to find 5 guys that play well enough that if you retain them, you feel, okay, this is a core. This is a building block where we don't have a full roster, but we have enough guys that we feel are good enough to play at this level that we can build around with transfers. I mean, in an ideal world, by fall is one of them. So you have the center short up. Kristen Woolley will be one of them. 1 or 2 of the Europeans are one of them. And then you have, other positions to fill. But those are the 2 things to me that would signal exceeding expectations and feeling good about where the program is after this year.
Yeah, that I think then the second part of your answer is the right part, because I can see that even at 15 and 18, right? If you get to the end of the year and you can still identify it, at least you're like, all right, I'm like, you know what? The record's bad. The team didn't perform win and loss wise. We knew it was going to be rough, but here we go. We have our core for next year, and we have a plan in place to keep those players. And they're not finished products yet, and they're not Big Ten stars yet, and it's not Dylan Harper, and we all understand that. But it's going to be these 5 guys, and we have someone in place to make sure that they are paid, and they're not going to be on Washington's roster next year after developing from them for a year. Like that to me is more important than what the win-loss record is. And you're just not going to know. You're just not going to know if that's the case. Really, I think you might be able to identify the first part of that equation. You can be able to watch this team and pick out the 5 players. I don't know if you're going to be able to sit there and know for sure they're going to be able to keep them. And that's the problem.
Right. So I guess I put you on the spot here, but last year we knew who the guy was, or the 2 guys were. It was Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey. They were going to lead the team in scoring. They were going to be the best players. Gun to your head. End of the year, who do you think leads this team in scoring? Who is the best scorer on this team?
That's amazing. Dylan Grant. I have to go with the one guy who, comes back with some scoring punch. I think that would be my guess. I haven't seen the Europeans play. I don't think Tariq Francis transfers to this level. We've seen Jermichael Davis, his limitations. Is not going to be one of the centers. I'm going through it like yeah. Is there another candidate? Who do you think it's going to be?
There are a couple, right? I think if you follow the style of play that this team wants to play, this kind of caveman, hard defense, and then score mostly on, points off of rebounds and stuff like that. Darren Buchanan is the down and dirty, get in the paint, get second chance points, get layups, stuff like that. So I think if they play that style, particularly considering how poor the 3-point shooting is going to be, or it projects to be, he has a chance of being that guy. Yeah. The other one, I think that would be really encouraging, is Harun Zerno. If you have him as a bona fide scorer, or at least a guy that you can consistently get 12, 13 points from every night, that would be, I think, the ideal scenario, unless Dylan Grant is the leading scorer because he expanded his range and he's hitting threes and he's a dependable scorer. Those 2 guys, I think, would be
Right.
the most dependable. And then I guess my other question is, this is a different question, obviously. Who do you think will be the best player on this team?
I'm just looking at this now. Friend Darren Buchanan went from 15.6 in the A10 in his first year to 10.6 last year. Just it's an interesting trend. It jumped at me. Who will be the best player on this team? I mean, I think it's the same answer. If it's not Dylan Grant, he takes a step back. I loved his potential. I think he's the kind of guy you could develop. That would be one. The way they talk about Badaloo, is it Badaloo? They got a lot of dots over vowels there. A lot of dots over vowels. They like him. Zerno, he's got the body. I mean, I think, again, you're right about that. If he turns out to be the best player, that's a really good sign. But I would just totally be guessing if I said someone other than Grant. You?
I agree that Grant is by far the highest. Like, if you're doing a betting odds, he's like minus 500, minus
Right.
1,000 to be the best player. Now, I'll throw this wild card at you that I think that if it happens, that's a really good sign about the future of the program. If Chris Newell is as elite of a defender as Steve Peichel thinks, and he shows some life offensively, right? He has a Dylan Grant-esque year offensively, then I think you're looking at a guy who, with Dylan Grant in conjunction, you could build around. That, to me, would be a really ideal scenario if he has a standout freshman year.
I just had a conversation where we were talking about him, and it's just funny. Like, again, like sometimes you watch a practice and you're looking for something, and talking about Newell, and you're like, oh God, he can do this, he can jump, he's athletic. And I just asked someone around the program, can he shoot? And I was like, no. It wasn't even like, wow, he's working on it. He's got no. Like, oh, okay. But that would certainly be a sign. And he's one of the 5. And I guess that's the other thing. Like, if you were to pick out those 5 players, you'd want Grant coming back for another year when he can become a, third team all Big Ten play. Like, he really takes that big step. If you have Newell as a freshman, if you have Lino Marks as a freshman, if these are the guys, you have, Zerno, you have these guys, if these are the guys who are in your core, if they show you something, I don't have a lot of faith for the big guys. I'm sorry. I know you said by fall's got to be one of mine. At this point, he's already played on 2, Power 4 teams. It showed nothing. Like, I don't have faith that he's going to be one of them. I think you're still going to have to find the center someplace. You have to spend money in the portal. But if you get those 4 guys and someone else in the backcourt, Caden Power, someone else, all right, there's a core, and then you have to retain them.
I would agree. And I know we're going long, but the people that are listening to this podcast in the first place are the kind of people that would listen to an hour of Rutgers basketball content, right? So let's just, I don't feel bad about going a little longer. I guess just the big picture that we haven't even talked about yet, right? Like, Steve Peichel is obviously in a precarious position after last year. I think we can both agree that he is in no danger of losing his job after the season, no matter how bad it gets, just because of how much money he would be owed. And just because of the same argument we've had with Schiano. William Tate hasn't called him the best coach in the country per capita, but he's obviously had similar limitations NIL-wise, and he didn't have a GM till now, etc. So I think, barring them going 0-31, he will be back after this year anyway. But I guess my question is, what do you have to see from this team, record-wise, on the court-wise, whatever, for you to feel like he can get his feet back under him, and the program is not necessarily back, but the downward spiral they've been in for the last 3 years will at least stop after this year?
Yeah, I need that this identity thing is not just, these are not just talking points. Like, I need to see that. Like, right, like, we're getting back to what we do best. And I need proof of that other than just saying it. I think that's it. And we got to see that this program is developing these players, that there is, that the defense is back to a certain level, that they are rebounding well, that they are doing, they turn the rack into a home court again, that they're overachieving against good opponents. Like, not, you don't have to beat, I get it, you're not going to beat Purdue, but it can't be like some of these listless 80-50 losses again. It can't be some of this. And these guys, you have to hit on some of these guys too. Like, you can't be owing, like, we've got 7 X factors here. You better be 3 for 7, right? You can't be 0 for 7. Like, you're not going to be 7 for 7. Like, some of these guys are not going to pan out. Like, I don't know which ones. I can't tell you which ones, but there better be some Big Ten players in this mix. And that's going to be a very subjective thing. Like, that's going to be something that it's going to be interesting. And I'm not as confident. I certainly would say odds are 90% Steve Peichel will be back next year. But he comes back then at that next year with you got to win. Then you've got to take a step back toward the NCAA tournament at that point. Like you can't stack 15 win seasons on top of one after another, because we've done the trend line now, and no matter what you say about where the resources are and the inability to get NIL, to surround people, you didn't win last year, didn't win the year before. We are now, I mean, Geo Baker's been out of college for a while. We're looking back at that. That is a long time ago already. So you're adding another year for that. On top of that, where the expectations are what they are, they get a pass because there's a new regime in place. But that's the other part about this, Brian. And we don't know. Like, Kelly's Inn didn't hire Steve Peichel. Like, William Tate didn't give him, like, when I talked to William Tate, like, he's like, there's one guy who knows how to win around here. It's Greg Shannon. He's not like, I don't know. I don't know how they feel about him.
Right.
We don't know.
Again, I agree. You said 90%. I thought that was a bit low, but I think that's fair. The thing is, like, his buyout is comparable to what Greg Schiano's would be, and basketball is clearly lower on the totem pole for most athletic departments. So are you going to spend that much money? No, if you're not going to fire Greg Schiano for 22, are you going to fire Steve Peichel for 20? No. Like, it doesn't make financial sense, right? Again, you could think the guy doesn't deserve to be the head coach anymore, which I think an increasing amount of people in the fan base believe that, but it has to make sense. Now, I guess to close this out, what is the 10% there? What is the 10%? How bad does it have to get for it even to be a discussion point? Like, what needs to happen? I think, to me, it has to be bad enough that people stop showing up to the rack, they get booed off the court, and the apathy, the corner of the fan base that is angry and disappointed becomes just, a majority of them just apathetic.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We're talking 2-18, 3-7. It has to be like a really, like, just a you can't return from it feeling. And I think, and under that circumstances, it's got to be both ways. Then he's 0 for 7 on these guys. Then his defensive philosophy is not working. Then it's clear that the program is unredeemable under him. Like, and I think that's the kind of decision that these major athletic departments make all the time with coaches who have long contracts. They're like, just can't, like, this is not working. There's nothing's going to turn it around. You're going to make this decision now, or you're going to make it next year. Like, that's kind of like how, and they make it now. So then I think that would be the conversation. I don't think it's going to get there. I really don't. It's just, I think they've got enough pieces in place that they're going to win some Big Ten basketball games. They're going to ugly it up. And yeah, for me, then it's the question of what do you see when you project it forward a year? What does this look like the year after this? Like, where are the pieces? And then, and I mean this, like, we can't be sitting here, after the transfer portal following the season and see these guys playing for Auburn. Like, you just can't. If that happens again, close the thing down, right? Just put boards over the doors of the rack. You've got to be able. That's the only hope here is keeping some of these guys, identifying them, developing them, finding a couple of them, know who they are, and building your roster around them.
Correct. I agree. And to be clear, I agree with you that I don't see any of this coming to fruition. I don't think they'll come close to being as bad that this would even be a legitimate discussion. But I think it's worth bringing up because I think some people feel that the program is stagnated, and I don't think it's it's something that should not be talked about. I think it's fair game at this point. I guess my final thought on this is that, to your exact point, Steve Peichel is going to win one way. He's shown that there's one way he wins. It's defense, it's rebounding, it's low scoring, low possession. It's the way he's going to win. And I think that's the way that the ship is either going to go down or resurrect itself. So this year will be exact proof of that, proof of concept. Can they still win this way with the roster limitations they have, with the NIL limitations they have to build this roster, with the talent deficiency they have? Can they still win this way in the NIL era? Or is Steve Peichel just kind of the product of able to win the old way, not able to win this way, and the program is stagnated? Because ultimately, we've talked about all these nitty-gritty stuff. The thing that matters to me is, does this program still have life? Can the program show life on the court and in the transfer portal over the next 7 months? Because if it doesn't, to your exact point, you're just kind of ticking down the clock, ticking away the seconds until things change.
Right. Absolutely. Sounds like a great column. Maybe I'll write that. All right. If you listen to us for an hour talk about basketball, you guys are either Dave White or you're sick in the head. Thanks for doing it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be at the Rack on Wednesday. As curious as you are to see it, and we'll be back to talk some more football later in the week as well. There's a lot of pods this week. Hope you guys got some free time on your hands. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant, sponsored by the Heldrich Hotel. Head to nj.com/Rutgers for more Scarlet Knight content.